So I'm home. It's Friday. I'm back from 49ers training camp, and guess what? Trey Lance wasn't very good today, and there wasn't a whole lot of redeeming stuff to write home about as far as 11 on 11 work went. So what are we all going to do? Are you all going to freak out? We're going to stay consistent, right, with how people treated Jimmy Garoppolo when he had a bad practice last year. Everybody just freaked out. Everybody tried to dump on him. No, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to set the record straight today, put stuff in context. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And most of all, it's practice. I hate to go all Allen Iverson on you, but it's just practice. And Trey Lance is a long-term investment. We're not going to be looking at individual practices as if they're some kind of end-all, be-all, especially now that the NFL season's even longer than it was before. But anyway, Trey Lance today, 3 of 10, an interception that probably was a pick six to Talanoa Hufanga. He threw it behind George Kittle. There was a whole lot of other inaccuracy from Trey Lance over those 10 throws. I'll talk a little bit about the offensive line later because they've been overmatched by the 49ers defensive line here, at least before pads have come on. But Lance just not, the last 2 days, I don't think that he's been particularly on target with most of his throws. He's been under 50% completion rate the past 2 days. But whereas Thursday saw some nice splash plays to make up for some of the bad ones like the interception to Jimmy Ward, Friday didn't really see any splash plays to make up for the bad ones. He airmailed Kittle on an out pattern. He just wasn't on target over the middle of the field. Kittle slipped on one of them. Ayuk did drop a pass, probably Trey Lance's nicest throw of the day. It was an off-schedule play where he was rolling out to the right, but that would have been a sack. And I'm not blaming that on Trey. I'm just just illustrating the circumstances there. If the quarterback were live, you can't touch quarterbacks in training camp, but if that had been live during a regular game, it probably would have been a sack. Anyway, to summarize the first 3 days of camp, Lance is 15 of 32. It's only 47%, 2 interceptions. It turns out that facing the first team defense and a really, really good first team defense in this 49ers unit, as far as we talked about how good they looked on paper entering training camp. Well, they have 6 interceptions against all 3 quarterbacks here throughout the first 3 days of camp. These guys are legitimate. They're deep in the secondary. The pass rush is good, and there's a whole lot of other extenuating circumstances. So it turns out that facing this defense is tougher than facing the second team defense of last season, and that's what Trey Lance got to face in 2021. But again, I put this up there. It's practice, and I have to illustrate that the hypocrisy is stunning. And by that, I mean, let's please keep some consistency in our evaluations. And that stretches back from last season to this season. Jimmy Garoppolo was the one being evaluated under the first team microscope in 2021. And now Trey Lance is the one being evaluated under the first team microscope in 2022. I understand it's going to be hard for some folks to be consistent through the 2 years because they were so biased against the Garoppolo and for Lance. But if you're tuning into this channel, you know that I play it even. I just tell it how it is. If a quarterback deserves credit, he gets credit. If he deserves criticism, he gets criticism. So last year throughout training camp, Jimmy Garoppolo was good during training camp. Was he perfect? No, he threw interceptions during camp, but he showed us approximately what the 49ers would see when he was healthy, at least over the course of that 2021 season. Same with Trey Lance. He actually had some shining moments in camp last year, but he struggled in the move the ball period. Situational football still was tough for Trey Lance. And then obviously he broke his finger against the Oakland Raiders or the Las Vegas Raiders to end the preseason. So we didn't see him as much during the regular season, especially when Jimmy Garoppolo was healthy. But if, you played it down the middle during camp last year, if you were fair to Garoppolo, if you didn't try to blow him up for every single interception that you threw, because again, it was practice, then you saw the truth. You saw the 49ers did indeed plan to do exactly what they said they did. And that was to start Garoppolo, no questions asked, for the 2021 season. So anyway, that was the way to evaluate 2021. How do we evaluate 2022? The same exact way. Trey Lance is going to have struggles. In fact, since he, I can't say he's a rookie anymore, but this is his first year as the starting quarterback. So this is his first year facing the first team defense on a day in, day out, snap in, snap out basis at training camp practice. So there are going to be struggles. There are going to be interceptions. There are going to be bad throws. There are going to be procedure penalties. And guess what? We're not going to act like they're the end of the world. Today, Trey Lance looked bad. I thought that he looked up and down yesterday on Thursday, but today I didn't think he had a great command of the offense. A couple procedure penalties up front. He was missing throws left and right. 3 of 10 tells the story, right? Then there was the interception that was thrown behind George Kittle, and Kittle wasn't even really looking. And, it was stuff that makes the 49ers thankful they're not playing a game today. But again, they're not playing a game here for over another month. We're still 6+ weeks away from the season opener on September 11th against Chicago. So let's keep these evaluations consistent from year to year. I don't want any of this hypocrisy. I don't want any of this. Let's trash Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021 for reasons that he shouldn't be trashed for practice picks, but then defend Trey Lance to the death here in 2022. That doesn't make sense. It's not fair to anybody involved, especially the viewer, especially the consumer, because we're trying to evaluate the chaos of a football season and put it into as much sense as possible. And when we do that, we have to realize that there's going to be ups and downs throughout training camp, especially for a young quarterback. So that's the main line. Bottom line, consider quarterback performance in context. So let's take a look at some of the context behind Trey Lance's rougher day today. 2022 context number 1. Lance is now working against the 49ers first team defense. When you take a look at the log that I have, or the spreadsheet as some of you like to call it, which I could pop open right now. We're going to add it to the stream. There you go. This is obviously up on Google Docs. You can see Trey Lance's numbers this year. Here are the cumulative numbers. 15 of 32, 2 interceptions, a 47% completion rate through 3 days. Well, why don't we go back to 2021? Why don't we see last year's camp? Through 3 days, Trey Lance, he was 5 of 7 on the first day, 6 of 10 on day 2, 5 of 10 on day 3. So I believe that adds up to 27 attempts. And 5 plus 5 plus 6, 16 to 27. That's about 15%. Lance didn't throw an interception in those first 3 days. So last year, through 3 days, Trey Lance was 16 of 27 with no picks. This year, through 3 days, Trey Lance is nowhere near as good. He is, as I check my notes, 15 of 32 with 2 picks. It turns out that facing the first team defense makes a difference. Last year, he got the pick on some of those second-team guys, and I don't care how inexperienced he was better than those second-team guys, and I think it was very clear from like day 1 or at least day 2. I remember tweeting that. It's like, we're not going to learn all too much with Trey Lance facing the second-team defense, but we have learned that there's major room for improvement against the first-team defense, and I would hope so because the 49ers first-team defense is really good, and Trey Lance is still really raw. More 2022 context behind Trey Lance's practice performance today. I just said it. The 49ers defense is really good. You got Charvarius Ward, sticky cornerback on one side. You have Emmanuel Mosley, bigger, stronger, playing excellent football this year. Talanoa Hufanga looks like an absolute pro. He had the pick today. In fact, Talanoa talked after practice, and, D'Amico Ryans complimented him on how he's accepted the challenge to become a better communicator on the back end. So I asked Talanoa what exactly that entailed, and he said, Fred Warner is a great communicator in the middle of the defense. Talanoa said, I want to become the Fred of the back end. And he took his instincts to play on that interception today. That was an instinctual pick. He knew that Trey Lance might miss that throw, reading his eyes, feeling where that one might go. And he had a whole cadre of blockers in front of him. They don't play out the entire down in practice after an interception like that. But I think if it were a game, that could have been a pick 6. So Lance is facing a really, really good unit in practice. That's 2022 context piece number 2. 2022 context piece number 3. Pads are not on yet, so the offensive line can't really protect themselves. This is the case in every single training camp. You're going to ramp it up slowly. So the first few sessions, 4 to be exact for the 49ers, they're going to be back out there tomorrow without pads. The first few sessions feature practice in shorts. And practice in shorts heavily gives an advantage to the defensive line because the offensive line, they're on the receiving end of contact, right? They're stepping up. They're the ones having to anchor against pass protection. So they're the ones that enjoy the armor, the padding. The defensive line, though, they're so good for the 49ers. They're so deep. Those guys have just been eating them alive. And then you add in the fact that Trent Williams hasn't participated in team reps yet. Mike McGlinchey hasn't participated in team reps yet. And you realize, that makes sense. The D-line is way ahead of the O-line. And if you want to simplify all of Trey Lance's struggles right now, a lot of them are happening behind a line that is collapsing in on him. And everybody says, well, that's why the 49ers got a mobile quarterback. He should be able to run away. Well, yeah, sometimes he is escaping, but this is the example I'll bring up time and time again. Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, backup offensive line, total scorched earth, right? Tampa Bay just overwhelmed him down after down, and the Kansas City Chiefs managed only 9 points. So even some of the best in the game need at least some level of blocking up front. And we'll see if the 49ers get that moving forward. Mondays when the pads come on after a day off on Sunday. Let's see if the line starts getting better. We should see Trent Williams, Mike McGlinchey back in action. And I think that's going to have to make a difference for the 49ers, because if it doesn't, oh boy, this is going to be a long season. Kyle Shanahan's talked about this roster. He says he's really happy with the wide receiver core. They're better than he's ever had in San Francisco. And the defensive line, obviously, is consistently good, maybe deeper than he's had. And obviously, the secondary is maybe the best that Kyle Shanahan's had with the 49ers. But he openly acknowledges that the 49ers have a lot of new guys along the interior offensive line and obviously a new guy at quarterback. And that's a problem, right? The combination of the two, because normally if you have a new guy at quarterback, you would hope that you have a strong offensive line to protect him, or vice versa, bad offensive line, experienced quarterback to help out that offensive line. But both are question marks for the 49ers this year. And this is absolutely something that could derail the team in 2022. But the 49ers are banking on the fact their defense is going to be so strong, the special teams is going to be good, and they're banking on the fact they believe in the developmental capability of both Trey Lance and the offensive line over the course of this season. They're looking at this in the long term, right? They're looking at this in the big picture. They think that by midseason or whenever it is, they're going to be able to click on offense. The thing is, we're not at midseason yet. It's July 29th right now, so growing pains are expected. All right, more 2022 context. Lance has thrown just 711 passes since high school. This one is key, right? Comes out of Marshall, Minnesota, plays a season at North Dakota State, that 2019 season. Leads into a national championship. They're 14-0. They're undefeated. Then he's getting ready for 2020. But nothing happens in 2020 because of COVID. In fact, they play one kind of exhibition-like game in the spring. So he was rusty for that, but there was no action for months before that, no action for months after that. In 2021, the 49ers drafted Trey Lance. Obviously, he saw 10 quarters of action and a few throws for the 49ers in that season, but his finger was broken for, essentially all of them. For that first start against Arizona, he was especially compromised. And, it ended up being just backup duty for Trey Lance. He got his feel of an NFL game. He got his feel for how Kyle Shanahan is going to call plays, but 10 quarters is not a whole lot to go off of. So 2021 was about getting the feet wet for Trey Lance, but he still has thrown only 711 passes since high school. A lot of NFL quarterbacks will throw more than that in an entire in just one season, right? So it's been a whirlwind for Trey Lance playing catch up as far as getting used to the speed of actual game competition. And we can expect him to have some struggles in these practices because of that. The 49ers, in fact, have been shouting this from the rooftops. You could talk to John Lynch. You could talk to Kyle Shanahan. You could talk to offensive players, to defensive players. Trey Lance is a long-haul project. Kyle Shanahan saying, we need to help Trey Lance out. He even cited 2019 when Jimmy Garoppolo was coming off the ACL, the first few games. Remember, the offense was a bit rougher than it was later in the season. It was the defense and the special teams that helped carry the 49ers to 8-0. The 49ers aren't shy about this. They're saying, we're going to need a similar formula this year. So if the 49ers are considering and openly saying that Trey Lance is a long-haul project, don't be worried about short-term blips. It's all part of a longer-term process. You have to be patient. We have to learn how to track a training camp correctly. One thing that people certainly didn't know how to do last year was track a training camp. Trey Lance would make one good throw against the second-team defense, and everybody would be like, oh, my God, he's going to be the starting quarterback. The 49ers are going to completely abandon their plan to have Jimmy Garoppolo start the entire 2021 season because Trey Lance made one good pass against the second-team defense. That's amateur hour. That's not how the 49ers considered things last year, and it's definitely not how you should be considering things this year. One bad throw, one bad practice, it's all water under the bridge. This is about improvement. This is about seeing the big picture. So I would encourage everybody to stop focusing on singular trees when you should be looking at the overall forest. It's so easy to get stuck looking at the bark of one tree because it's hard to get into that drone, elevate, and then see the whole forest because perspective is difficult. But I'm sorry, we should already have a full year of perspective through the wildness of 2021. We could even go back further into 2019 when Garoppolo, coming off the ACL, threw 5 picks against this 49ers defense in training camp. And, back then, people, I don't think, appreciated or realized quite how good this 49ers defense would be. But they were maybe the best unit in the league in that 2019 season. Then the 5 picks with Garoppolo coming off an ACL made a whole lot of sense. So let's take a look at this in the same kind of context. Good defense working against not a quarterback coming off an ACL, but a quarterback who's very, very inexperienced in Trey Lance. Anyway, I'm going to take a few questions. Why don't you all like the video, subscribe to the channel as you're coming in. And before I take some questions, I'm going to play today's practice highlights. This is the Trey Lance reel from practice today. So why don't we take a look, see what's going on with old Trey at 49ers practice. Start off with the warm-up trail. That is Brian Griese, former Broncos quarterback. Played under Mike Shanahan, new 49ers quarterbacks coach, warming up with Trey Lance. Now, the Red Hot Chili Peppers have a concert happening tonight at Levi Stadium there in the background. I know the music is not playing right now. I have it silent, but the Red Hot Chili Peppers were blasting over the speakers at 49ers practice in honor of the concert that's starting a little bit after 6 o'clock tonight. So this is warm-up. Lance and Brian Griese, they're going to be going back and forth. You can tell that they're jamming out there. Nate Sudfeld was jamming out to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I think Brian Griese liked what was going on as well. And I couldn't help but notice that Trey Lance seemed to be backpedaling, tossing the football in rhythm to the music as well. It was a good festive Friday atmosphere here, at least during warm-ups. We're now going to move from the warm-up drill to an interesting medicine ball drill. I'm not sure what order I put them in this video. I edited this video a little bit earlier, but we'll soon have a look. They had these medicine balls rolling around, acting as pass rushers. There you see them on the right. Big silver medicine balls, and they'd push those toward the quarterback just to keep his eyes in the right place. Trey Lance directing traffic at practice. You could tell they're still getting some of the kinks ironed out, the practice formula fully ironed out. Brock Purdy trying to find out where to line up, but it's a new room. Purdy's new. Trey Lance is new. Brian Griese's new, first-time coaching. Sudfeld's really the only holdover there. Of course, Bobby Slowick worked with the quarterbacks last year as well. All right, here you have the pass rushing medicine balls. Nick Bosa and Javon Kinlaw sure look a whole lot different. Big silver spheres, but Trey Lance working with those, throwing the ball short. See him take another snap right here. This is still the second period of practice early on before they start doing work with actual receivers. They just have some staffers catching the football there for the snaps. Working on some of the fine details. Brian Griese is going to roll the medicine ball one more time. Oh, Trey Lance mobile enough to get away from it. Throws to the near side. Later on in practice today, we saw the struggles for Trey Lance, the 3 of 10, the interception. Nate Sudfeld, who was 20 of 22 over the first 2 days, also was not nearly as accurate today. He was 3 of 9. So Sudfeld came down to earth. In fact, best completion percentage belonged to this guy, Brock Purdy. And Purdy today, I mean, he could be a little inconsistent with his arm, but if he gets his lower body underneath it, there's definitely plentiful zip. But Purdy's just a guy who I thought on his college film, the off-platform stuff looked a little bit stronger than it does in person, in practice. But he threw a couple ugly floaters for picks on Thursday, and they both were when he was running cross-body off-platform, and it was like, I don't know if he's strong enough to deliver that kind of throw. Trey Lance definitely is strong enough. I mean, that ball zips out of his hand. Today, he had his first real wobbler, just came out of his hand wrong. That was during an 11-on-11s. It was intended for either Ayuk or Ray McLeod deep out down the far sideline. And it's a problem when you're not sure who it was intended to because the throw was so ugly, but it just came out of his hand wrong. So wouldn't be something that I'm too worried about. In fact, like I would say that through 3 days, Trey Lance's mechanics have clearly been better than they were last season. And that's the main concern to me. I know that Trey Lance is smart. I know that he's going to process Kyle Shanahan's playbook. I know that he's athletic. I know that the learning curve is probably going to be, considerable because you have to combine those things for a quarterback who's only thrown 711 times since high school. But what is that bridging of the gap in between those two? What's going to take Trey Lance and take all of his assets and package them together into effective NFL quarterback play are the mechanics. And the mechanics, to be honest, that's something that had to get better entering this season. The windup was a little too elongated, right? The spirals were wobbly. Part of the explanation was the broken finger last year, but we needed to see a crisper Trey Lance as far as mechanical delivery this season because a quick release is really important in the NFL. And I do think that he has shortened up the release. I do think that the mechanics have tightened up to the point where you can be optimistic. And, I use the word tightened strategically because the spirals have also been tighter this season. That being said, those of you just joining, it was a rough practice, and I'm ready to take some questions about that practice so we can kind of get to the bottom of this and make sure everything is being evaluated fairly. So hit me with your questions. I'm opening up the comment section. Trey Lance is about to get John Lynch and Shanahan fired, says Jeremy Nicholson. His release is too slow. Okay, there's so much to say about that. I obviously don't agree. It's too soon to judge anything. Yes, if Trey Lance completely flames out, that's not good for this regime. But God, like he's played 10 quarters. He's in his first training camp here as the starting quarterback. I think the release was definitely too elongated last year. But part of the point is that Trey Lance is not going to be the same quarterback as Jimmy Garoppolo, who thrives, lives, and dies off of his release. It's one of the quickest in football. That's Jimmy Garoppolo's strong suit. Trey Lance's strong suit is something completely different. So this is apples and oranges, right? We have to talk about Trey Lance's ability to elude some of these rushes. He has a higher escape rate than Jimmy Garoppolo. His ability to deliver off schedule. That's what the 49ers are ultimately looking for. And that's something that we won't really get to appreciate until games start. So let's stop it with these slam dunk projections right now. We don't have to have a hot take that ties Trey Lance's 3 for 10 practice to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch getting fired. I mean, that's so premature. It's hilarious. So let's focus on generalities like this. Trey Lance has mobility. Yes. The mobility. I don't know if you put the in front of it, but yes, he has mobility. That is what Kyle Shanahan wanted. That's why they traded up to go get Trey Lance. They wanted somebody who could deliver from the pocket, but also have the mobility on top of that. What made it a bad practice? Well, he was inaccurate. He was 3 of 10. I didn't think he had great command at the line of scrimmage. I thought that there were 2 procedure penalties. Thought the 49ers looked a little out of sync. Ultimately, that's going to come back down to the quarterback. He threw a terrible interception that I think was a pick 6 to Talanoa Hufanga. So just wasn't a productive practice for the offense. Now, I went through the context, the extenuating circumstances. That defensive line is really putting a lot of heat on Trey Lance. The O-line, once those pads come on, they better start blocking a little bit better, or it's going to be a long training camp for the second-year QB. Trey Lance versus Colin Kaepernick, are they comparable? I don't really think so. I mean, Colin Kaepernick came out of the pistol system under Chris Alt at Nevada. He wasn't really familiar with a pro-style offense. He was a major, major project in that regard for Jim Harbaugh's staff, whereas the most pro-style trained quarterback drafted high in that 2021 draft was Trey Lance. North Dakota State got him ready for that. North Dakota State runs the kind of offense that you see in the pros, that you see with the 49ers, whereas Colin Kaepernick couldn't have said the same with his time at Nevada. Kaepernick, really slow release, right? I mean, that's the big baseball windup. Lance has got a loop in it, but I don't think it's nearly as slow because he has already been a little bit coached in that pro-style game. So I think he's much more polished in that regard. Kaepernick ran like a gazelle, really, really long strides. I think Trey Lance is obviously fast too, but the Kaepernick, that was something else on a straight line speed. I think Lance will probably have a little bit more elusiveness and quickness than straight line speed than Colin Kaepernick. Ultimately, I think they're 2 really different players, and I think Trey Lance has the chance to be more accurate than Colin Kaepernick was, just because he is coming from more of the pro-style throwing motion. And I think that background, that ability to scan the field, Colin would miss a lot of the field when you watched him. I think Trey Lance, for him, it's not going to be an issue. And I think that's why the 49ers, Colin was a second-round draft pick. Trey Lance was somebody who went in the top 5, who the 49ers traded the farm away to be able to draft. And therein lies the difference in talent, and it's pistol versus pro style as far as background goes. So I don't find them to be all too comparable. Is there one running back that can pick up the blitz? Well, Ty Davis-Price was awesome picking up the blitz at LSU, and I think that's why he's going to play early and often for the 49ers, rookie picked in the 3rd round. How's it hypocrisy to be mad about an 8-year veteran with a $100 million contract throwing 5 picks in camp as both not being mad about a second-year guy who barely played, not struggling? No. So you're kind of misrepresenting my argument here. My thing is you shouldn't be mad about anything in training camp practice. People found reasons to pile on Jimmy Garoppolo, and they're finding reasons to excuse Trey Lance. You need to bring both of those extremes to the middle, right? There is reason to be concerned about Trey Lance and the rate at which he'll develop. I'm optimistic about it personally, but there's obviously reason to be concerned. I mean, the 49ers are moving on from a quarterback who won a whole lot of games for him, who outplayed Aaron Rodgers, who outplayed Dak Prescott while hurt on the road in the playoffs. And they're handing the keys of this Ferrari to essentially a rookie, a second-year guy who's extremely raw. So there's reason to be like, okay, how quickly is this guy going to develop so he doesn't screw everything up, right? That's the question that we're asking right now. How are the 49ers going to make sure to keep the line moving? So it's totally fine, and it's totally in play to, when you're fairly evaluating Trey Lance, to ask those questions. But you don't go off one practice and be like, oh my God, this guy, he's going to be a complete bust. Or you don't go off of one throw like people were going off last year and coronate him as, the next Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen with no further need of development. It's these extreme takes about Trey Lance that are insane, just like the extreme takes about Jimmy Garoppolo in practice last season were insane. Practice does not deserve any of those takes. We need nuanced, overarching analysis that takes into consideration all of the factors, especially the fact that practice is just one tree in the middle of a larger forest moving forward. So the pendulum just swings so violently with a lot of these people online. So I just use that as an example, right? These people would see Trey Lance make a great throw, name him the starter a year before Kyle Shanahan was planning to, and they'd see one bad throw from Jimmy Garoppolo and want to bench him, right? And now, we're going to see more of the same overreactions, probably in another direction for Trey Lance. So let's just let go of any overreaction in any direction, because all of them just, when there are biases, will lead people to hypocritical stances. And hypocritical stances don't get us anywhere when we're trying to fairly evaluate a football team. And that's what my goal with this channel is. All right, let's ask some more questions, guys. I'm going to scroll down. Sorry, there's a lot coming through, hundreds of questions, so there's no way that I'm going to get to close to all of them, but I'm going to try to answer as much as possible. Yes, Spencer Burford did play with the ones today. First team right guard. Again, we can't read anything into this offensive line stuff any more than we already have until the pads come on, and that's Monday, because then those guys will have a chance to protect themselves. We're probably going to see some roster lineup rotations when Trent Williams and Mike McGlinchey come back. And next week's going to be fun because we could finally start analyzing some of this in earnest. I got to stop reading comments when I watch Niners content videos. I get sick of all the arguing. Yeah, don't we all? But I'm trying to interact with you guys as much as possible. All right. Any more questions, guys? Do I think the O-line will be protecting Lance? Well, I think they're going to try. We'll see if it works. I mean, I said Top Gun, Danger Zone. That's the song that plays in my head when I think about this offensive line and Trey Lance, a young quarterback. I mean, if there's a crack in the Death Star, right, if there's a weakness, it's the 49ers mechanism right there in the middle of the offense, the interior offensive line and the young quarterback. The defense looks awesome so far. The running backs, I think, look good, but it's hard to tell because it's not live tackling and the pads aren't even on yet. The receivers, though, I think are going to be solid this season. And the special teams, I mean, they've invested so much to make that unit better. Check, 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 check. A lot of check marks, but there's not a check mark yet there for that interior offensive line. And Trey Lance is earning his check mark right now. So the question is, are those question marks going to find answers? And if they do, then the 49ers can go a really, really long way. It's not going to be JC Treader time until the center position completely blows up. And it can't blow up until the pads are on. Again, offensive line, this is short football and shorts that are a tremendous disadvantage right now. We have to wait. Eric Gomes says the Niners are a Super Bowl team barring injuries. Well, I mean, I think it's possible. The defense on all levels has the talent. The offense has the receivers and maybe the running backs. And now we're seeing if the line and the quarterback are up to the task. And they drafted that quarterback and spent so much on him because they believe he will be up to the task. So optimism, I think, is warranted. So I do agree with the notion of that comment. Brunskill's snaps are all coming at center so far. First team, second team, which is interesting to me. So maybe they're really trying for Spencer Burford to take that right guard spot. But we have a long way to go. I think Kyle is confident in the offensive line the way that it is because he thinks that the 49ers have developed some of these guys. He believes in Chris Foerster. He thinks that Aaron Banks is going to be good this year. He believes in either Brunskill or Brendel at center. And most of all, and I think this might be a slight flaw in Kyle's thinking, he trusts himself schematically. He thinks he could sometimes scheme around some deficiencies, especially on the interior line. I think he's been proven wrong in that regard here. And he's never said that explicitly, obviously. But with Jimmy Garoppolo, even with the quick release, sometimes Aaron Donald would be in his lap a little bit too fast. Now, Shanahan could be like, well, I drafted a mobile quarterback. The escape rate's going to be a little bit better. He can get out of the pocket. Maybe occasionally. But again, I go back to the Patrick Mahomes example in the Super Bowl. That was Super Bowl 55, the one after the 49ers played the Chiefs, the one against the Bucs. Mahomes is escapable. Like, he could get away. He couldn't get away enough against that Tampa Bay defense. So I think blocking, pass protection ultimately does matter. This is a comment. I'm trying to figure it out. Yeah, I mean, the 49ers did. I mean, it was a bad team in 17. Garoppolo took over. They went 5-0. It's one of the impressive starts to Garoppolo's tenure with the 49ers. I mean, that ended up earning him the contract, right, in 2018. This is true. The 49ers would be in the toilet without Kyle Shanahan, despite his faults. Nobody is perfect. Bill Walsh wasn't perfect, but you got to look at the aggregate. You can't focus and make mountains out of molehills of these negatives, right? You have to look at the big picture. All right. I'm getting a little tired, guys. The main thing, though, is to stop focusing on singular trees when you should be looking at the forest. Everybody like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be coming out with some more stuff from practice today. I still have some more footage from practice, some nice combo blocks, tight ends, offensive linemen. Trent Williams was back, so that was good. So sub to the channel. We'll get all that stuff up. I'm going to keep on pumping out content. Back out there tomorrow, day off Sunday. Content will not stop flowing. All right, everybody take care. Have a good Friday afternoon.